The rain slammed against the diner's fogged-up windows, a relentless drumbeat that drowned out the world. Inside, the air smelled of burnt coffee and greasy fries, the kind of place where dreams go to sulk. I sat in a cracked vinyl booth, my fingers tracing the rim of a chipped mug, the warmth long gone. My heart was a live wire, sparking with every glance at the door. He was late, again. My crush, Ethan, with his easy smile and quarterback swagger, had promised to meet me here tonight. Homecoming was tomorrow, and I'd spent weeks working up the nerve to ask him to go together. But the clock ticked past 9, and the ache in my chest grew sharper, like a blade twisting slow. I sighed, the sound heavy in the empty diner. The waitress, a woman with tired eyes and a name tag reading Doris, gave me a pitying look as she refilled my water. "Boy trouble?" she asked, her voice raspy from years of cigarette breaks. I forced a smile, shaking my head, but the truth burned. Ethan wasn't coming. He'd probably forgotten, caught up in his perfect life, his perfect friends, his perfect everything. I was just Caleb, the quiet kid from the wrong side of town, the one who spent too much time sketching in notebooks and dreaming of a life that didn't feel so small. The bell above the door jingled, and my heart lurched. But it wasn't Ethan. It was him, Ryder Kane. 6 feet of trouble wrapped in a leather jacket, his dark hair damp from the rain, curling at the edges. His eyes, sharp and storm gray, locked onto mine like he'd been looking for me. My stomach flipped. Ryder was Ethan's rival, the guy who ruled the other side of our small town's high school hierarchy. Captain of the lacrosse team, all edge and attitude, he was the kind of guy who could make you feel alive and terrified in the same breath. Everyone knew he and Ethan hated each other. Some old grudge from freshman year that no one fully understood but everyone whispered about. "Mind if I sit?" Ryder's voice was low, rough, like gravel under tires. He didn't wait for an answer, sliding into the booth across from me. The scent of rain and cedar clung to him, sharp and dizzying. I opened my mouth to protest, but the words stuck. He leaned forward, elbows on the table, his gaze pinning me in place. "You look like someone stood you up." I bristled, my cheeks burning. "I'm fine." "Sure you are." He smirked, but there was something soft in it, something that caught me off guard. "Ethan, right? Golden boys got a habit of letting people down." I wanted to snap back, to defend Ethan, but the truth stung too much. Instead, I looked away, staring at the rain streaking down the window. "What do you want, Ryder?" He leaned back, stretching his arms along the booth, his presence filling the space like he owned it. "Saw you through the window. Looked like you could use some company." His tone was casual, but his eyes weren't. They studied me like he was seeing something I didn't want him to see. "I don't need your pity," I said, sharper than I meant. "Not pity." He tilted his head, a lock of wet hair falling into his eyes. "Just curiosity. Why do you keep chasing someone who doesn't see you?" The question hit like a punch. My breath caught, and I hated how exposed I felt, like he'd peeled back my skin to look inside. "You don't know me?" I muttered, grabbing my jacket to leave. But his hand shot out, catching my wrist. Not hard, but firm enough to stop me. His touch was warm, electric, and my pulse stuttered. "Stay," he said, quieter now, almost a plea. "One drink. Let me prove I'm not the asshole everyone thinks I am." I should have left. I should have walked out into the rain and gone home to my empty apartment, where Mom was probably passed out on the couch again. But something in Ryder's voice, in the way his thumb brushed the inside of my wrist, made me pause. Against every shred of sense, I sat back down. We talked. God, we talked. About nothing and everything, music, movies, the way the town felt like a cage. He told me about his dad, a drunk who'd left when he was 10, and I told him about Mom, about how I'd stopped hoping she'd get sober. The words spilled out, raw and unfiltered, like the rain outside. His laugh was low, warm, like a fire I wanted to curl up next to. And his eyes, those damn eyes, kept finding mine, holding them, making my skin hum. Hours passed, the diner emptying until it was just us and Doris wiping down counters. The air between us crackled, heavy with something I couldn't name. When he leaned closer, his knee brushing mine under the table, my breath hitched. "You're not what I expected, Caleb," he said, his voice soft but intense, like he was confessing something. "What did you expect?" I asked, my heart pounding so loud I was sure he could hear it. He smiled, slow and dangerous. "Someone who'd bore me." I laughed, shaky, and for the first time that night, I felt seen. Not as Ethan's shadow, not as the kid with the drunk mom, but as me. The rain slowed to a drizzle, and when Ryder suggested we get out of there, I didn't think twice. We ended up in his car, a beat-up Mustang that smelled of leather and gasoline. The radio played some old rock song, low and thrumming. As we drove through the empty streets, the town blurring past in a haze of neon and rain. He pulled into a deserted lot by the lake, the water glinting under the moonlight. My heart was a drum in my chest, loud and unsteady. "Why here?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. He turned to me, his face half-lit by the dashboard glow. "Because I wanted to be alone with you." The words hung in the air, heavy, electric. Before I could process them, he leaned in, his lips brushing mine. Tentative at first, then hungry. My hands found his jacket, pulling him closer, and the world fell away. It was just us, the taste of rain on his lips, the heat of his hands on my waist, the way my body lit up like a sparkler. I'd never kissed anyone like that, like I was drowning and breathing all at once. But then headlights cut through the dark. A car pulled up beside us, and my stomach dropped. "Ethan." His face was a mask of fury as he stepped out, his voice sharp enough to slice through the night. "What the hell, Caleb?" "With him." Ryder stiffened, his jaw tight, but he didn't back down. "Walk away, Ethan. This doesn't concern you." "Like hell it doesn't." Ethan's voice cracked, raw with something I couldn't place. Anger? Betrayal? Maybe something deeper. I scrambled out of the car, my heart in my throat, torn between the boy I'd wanted for years and the one who just turned my world upside down. "Caleb, let's go," Ethan said, his eyes pleading now softer. But Ryder stepped closer, his hand grazing mine, and I felt it. The pull, the heat, the reckless want. "I'm not going anywhere," I said, my voice shaking but sure. Ethan's face crumpled, and he got back in his car, peeling out into the night. Ryder looked at me, his expression unreadable, and for a moment, I thought he'd kiss me again. Instead, he sighed, long and heavy, and said, "You sure about this?" I wasn't, but I nodded anyway, and when he pulled me back into the car, I let myself fall into the chaos of him. The night, the reckless choice I'd made. The weeks after that night were a blur of heat and guilt, like a fever I couldn't shake. Ryder and I were a secret, stolen moments in his car, in the shadows of the school bleachers, in the quiet of his apartment when his mom was at work. Every touch was a spark, every glance a promise, but the weight of Ethan's betrayal hung over me like a storm cloud. He hadn't spoken to me since the lake, his silence louder than any words. I saw him in the halls, his jaw tight, his eyes avoiding mine, and it cut deeper than I expected. Ryder was different. He was all in, no hesitation, like he'd been waiting for me his whole life. But he was reckless, too, showing up at my locker with that dangerous smile, pulling me into empty classrooms, whispering things that made my blood hum. "You're mine, Caleb," he'd say, his breath warm against my ear, and I'd believe him, even as doubt gnawed at me. What were we doing? This wasn't a fairy tale. This was a small town where secrets didn't stay buried, where people like me, quiet, queer, from the wrong side of the tracks, didn't get happy endings. Then came the party. It was at some senior's house, a sprawling place with too many rooms and too much liquor. The air was thick with sweat and cheap beer, the bass of the music vibrating in my chest. Ryder had convinced me to go, his hand on the small of my back as we walked in, like he was claiming me in front of everyone. I felt exposed, alive, terrified. People stared, some curious, some hostile, but Ryder didn't care. He never did. Halfway through the night, I lost him in the crowd. I wandered through the house, the walls pulsing with music, my head fuzzy from one too many drinks. That's when I saw her. Lily, Ethan's twin sister, the one person who'd always been kind to me, even when Ethan wasn't. She was sitting on a couch, her blonde hair catching the light, her eyes sharp and knowing. "Caleb," she said, patting the seat beside her. "Sit. You look like you're about to bolt." I sat, the leather couch sticking to my thighs. "I'm fine," I lied, but my voice cracked, and she raised an eyebrow. "Ryder, huh?" she said, her tone light but probing. "Didn't see that coming." I flushed, my fingers twisting in my lap. "It's complicated." She laughed, soft but bitter. "Everything's complicated with Ethan around." She leaned closer, her voice dropping. "He's hurt, you know. He won't say it, but he is." My chest tightened. "He stood me up. He doesn't get to be hurt." Lily sighed, her gaze drifting to the crowd. "He's my brother, but he's an idiot sometimes. Doesn't mean he doesn't care." Her words twisted something inside me, a knot of guilt and longing I didn't want to untangle. Before I could respond, Ryder appeared, his eyes dark as he took in the scene. "Everything okay?" he asked, his voice tight, like he was ready for a fight. Lily stood, brushing her hands on her jeans. "Just catching up with Caleb. Don't worry, Kane. I'm not stealing him." She winked at me, but there was something sad in it, something that lingered as she walked away. Ryder pulled me outside, the night air cool against my flushed skin. "What was that about?" he asked, his hands in his pockets, his shoulders tense. "Nothing," I said, but the lie tasted sour. "Just Ethan stuff." His jaw clenched, and for a moment I thought he'd let it go. But then he stepped closer, his voice low and raw. "You still want him, don't you?" The question hit like a slap. I opened my mouth to deny it, but the words wouldn't come, because deep down I wasn't sure. Ryder's eyes searched mine, and I saw it. The hurt, the vulnerability he hid from everyone else. "Caleb," he said, softer now, "I'm not playing games. Are you?" I shook my head, my throat tight. "I don't know what I'm doing," I admitted, my voice barely audible over the distant hum of the party. I feel too much." He reached for me, his hand cupping my face, his thumb brushing my cheek. "Then feel it with me," he said, and kissed me, hard and desperate, like he was trying to anchor us both. I kissed him back, my hands fisting in his shirt, but Ethan's face flashed in my mind, and I hated myself for it. That's when it happened. A shout from inside, sharp and panicked. "Fight!" someone yelled, and the crowd surged toward the living room. My heart sank as I followed, Ryder's hand tight around mine. There, in the center of the room, was Ethan, his fist colliding with some guy's face. Blood sprayed, and the crowd roared. Ethan's eyes were wild, his knuckles red, and when he saw me, he froze. "Ethan, stop!" I shouted, pushing through the crowd, but he didn't listen. Ryder pulled me back, his grip firm. "Let him go, Caleb. He's not your problem." But he was. He always had been. And as I watched Ethan get tackled to the ground, his eyes locked on mine, I felt the world tilt. Ryder's hand slipped from mine, and when I turned to him, his face was hard, closed off. "Make a choice," he said, his voice cold. "Me or him?" I stood there, the music pounding, the air thick with tension, and I didn't know what to say. So I ran. Out the door, into the night, the cold biting my skin as I stumbled down the street, my breath ragged, my heart a mess of want and fear and everything in between. The next morning, my head throbbed, a dull ache that matched the bruise in my chest. I hadn't slept, the memory of Ryder's ultimatum and Ethan's bloodied knuckles replaying like a broken record. My apartment was quiet, too quiet, the kind of silence that amplifies every thought. Mom was gone, probably at some bar, and the fridge was empty except for a half carton of milk gone sour. I stood at the sink, staring at the dishes piling up, the smell of stale beer clinging to the air. My phone buzzed. A text from Ryder. "We need to talk." I ignored it, my fingers trembling as I shoved the phone in my pocket. School was a minefield. Ethan was there, a black eye blooming on his face, his usual golden glow dimmed. He didn't look at me, but I felt his presence like a weight. Ryder, on the other hand, was everywhere. Leaning against my locker, waiting outside my classes, his eyes burning with questions I wasn't ready to answer. I dodged him, my heart a traitor, torn between the boy who'd broken it and the one who'd set it on fire. Then came the twist I didn't see coming. It was a Tuesday, gray and heavy with the threat of snow. I was in the library, hiding in the stacks, when Lily found me. She looked different, nervous, her hands twisting the hem of her sweater. "Caleb," she said, her voice low, "I need to tell you something." I frowned, setting down my book. "What's wrong?" She hesitated, her eyes darting to the empty aisles. "It's about Ethan. And me." She took a breath, like she was steeling herself. "I'm the reason he stood you up that night at the diner." My stomach dropped. "What?" She looked away, her voice barely above a whisper. "I asked him not to go. I told him you were confused, that you needed space. I didn't think he'd listen, but he did." "Why would you do that?" My voice was sharp, anger flaring hot in my chest. "Because I was jealous," she said, her eyes meeting mine, raw and unguarded. "Not of you, of him. I've liked you for a long time, Caleb. And I know it's messed up, but I couldn't stand the idea of you and him together." The air left my lungs. Lily, with her soft smiles and quiet kindness, had been carrying this secret? I didn't know what to say, my head spinning with the weight of her confession. "Lily, I don't. You don't have to say anything," she cut in, her voice breaking. "I just needed you to know. I'm sorry." She turned and walked away, leaving me staring at the empty space where she'd been, my world tilting again. That night, I went to Ryder's apartment. I didn't plan it. My feet just carried me there, like they knew where I needed to be. He opened the door, shirtless, his hair a mess, and the sight of him hit me like a wave. "Caleb," he said, surprise softening his voice. "You okay?" "No," I admitted, stepping inside. The apartment smelled of coffee and paint, a canvas half-finished on an easel in the corner. I hadn't known he painted, and the discovery made my heart ache in a new way. "I'm a mess, Ryder. Everything's a mess." He didn't say anything, just pulled me into his arms, his warmth grounding me. We didn't talk about Ethan or Lily or the party. We didn't need to. His lips found mine, and it was like the world snapped back into focus, sharp, vivid, real. We ended up on his couch, tangled together, the sound of our breaths loud in the quiet. His hands were careful but sure, like he was mapping every inch of me, and I let myself fall, let myself forget. But the next morning, reality crashed back. I woke up in his bed, the sheets cool against my skin, his arm heavy across my waist. And I panicked. What was I doing? This was too much, too fast, too everything. I slipped out, grabbing my clothes, my heart pounding as I left without a word. I told myself it was for the best, that I needed to figure myself out, that I couldn't keep playing with fire. Weeks passed. I avoided Ryder, ignored his texts, his calls. I saw him at school, his eyes dark with hurt, but I couldn't face him. Ethan tried to talk to me once, his voice soft, apologetic, but I brushed him off. I was done with both of them, done with the drama, the chaos. I just wanted to disappear. Then I started feeling sick, tired all the time, nauseous, my body betraying me in ways I didn't understand. I thought it was stress, the weight of everything piling up. But when I missed my cycle, panic set in. I bought a test, my hands shaking as I locked myself in the bathroom, the fluorescent light harsh against the tiles. The wait was agony, each second a hammer against my chest. When the 2 lines appeared, my world stopped. I was pregnant, with Ryder's child. The test sat on the bathroom counter, mocking me. 2 lines, stark and undeniable, like a verdict I couldn't appeal. My knees buckled, and I sank to the floor, the cold tiles biting through my jeans. My breath came in short, ragged gasps, the air thick with the smell of bleach and my own fear. Pregnant. Me, Caleb, the kid who could barely keep his life together, now carrying a piece of Ryder Kane inside him. The thought was a wildfire, burning through every plan, every dream, every fragile hope I'd clung to. I didn't tell anyone. Not Mom, who'd barely notice anyway. Not Lily, whose confession still stung like an open wound. And definitely not Ryder. I couldn't face him. Couldn't bear the thought of seeing his storm-gray eyes widen with shock or, worse, pity. So I hid. I skipped school, ignored texts, buried myself in hoodies and silence. But you can't outrun a truth like that. It followed me, heavy as a shadow, in every quiet moment, every sleepless night. A month later, I couldn't hide anymore. My body was changing, subtle, but enough to make my clothes feel wrong, my skin foreign. I was at the corner store, buying ginger ale to settle my stomach, when I ran into Ethan. He was in a hoodie, his black eye faded but his expression still bruised. "Caleb," he said, his voice soft, like he was afraid I'd bolt. "Can we talk?" I wanted to say no, to keep running, but something in his eyes stopped me. We ended up at the park, sitting on a bench under a bare oak tree, the wind sharp with the promise of winter. "I messed up," he said, his hands stuffed in his pockets. "That night at the diner, I should have been there. I wanted to be." "Then why weren't you?" My voice was sharper than I meant, but the hurt was still raw, a wound that hadn't scabbed over. He sighed, his breath clouding in the cold. "Lily, she said you needed space, that you were figuring things out. I thought I was doing the right thing." He looked at me, his eyes searching. "I didn't know about Ryder. Not until the lake." The mention of Ryder twisted something in my chest. I looked away, my fingers digging into the bench. "It's over," I said, the lie bitter on my tongue. "It doesn't matter." "It matters to me," Ethan said, quieter now. "I care about you, Caleb. I always have. I didn't know how to say it." His words were a punch, stealing my breath. For years, I'd wanted to hear them, dreamed of them. But now they felt like a weight I couldn't carry. Not with Ryder's child growing inside me, not with the chaos of my heart. I stood, my head spinning. "I can't do this right now," I said, and walked away, leaving him on the bench, his face a blur of regret. I didn't expect to see Ryder that night. But there he was, outside my apartment, leaning against his Mustang, the streetlight casting shadows across his face. My heart lurched, a mix of fear and want. "You can't keep avoiding me," he said, his voice low, rough with something that sounded like pain. "I'm not," I started, but he cut me off, stepping closer, his hands clenched at his sides. "Don't lie to me, Caleb. You left. No explanation, no nothing. What the hell happened?" His eyes searched mine, and I saw it. The hurt, the anger, the need. It broke something in me. "I was scared," I admitted, my voice barely audible. "I still am." "Of me?" he asked, his voice cracking, and it was the first time I'd seen him vulnerable, stripped bare. "Of everything," I said, my eyes burning. "Of us. Of this." I gestured to myself, to the secret I couldn't keep much longer. His gaze followed my hand, and I saw the moment it clicked, the moment he understood. "Caleb," his voice was a whisper, his face paling. "Are you?" I nodded, tears spilling over, hot against my cheeks. "I didn't know how to tell you. I still don't." He stepped closer, his hands reaching for me, then stopping, like he was afraid I'd shatter. "Why didn't you tell me?" he asked, his voice raw. "Did you think I'd run?" "I thought I had to," I said, my voice breaking. "I thought it was better for both of us." "Better?" He laughed, bitter and broken. "Caleb, you're carrying my kid. Our kid. And you think running is better." He closed the distance, his hands cupping my face, his thumbs brushing away my tears. "I'm not going anywhere. Not unless you tell me to." The world blurred, the streetlight a halo around him. I wanted to believe him, wanted to fall into the warmth of his hands, his words. But fear was a vice squeezing tight. "What about Ethan?" I whispered, the question slipping out before I could stop it. Ryder's jaw tightened, but his eyes didn't leave mine. "Ethan doesn't get to decide who you are, or who we are." He leaned in, his forehead against mine, his breath warm and unsteady. "I love you, Caleb. I've loved you since that night in the diner, when you looked at me like I was more than just the guy everyone hates." The words hit like a tidal wave, washing away the doubt, the fear, at least for a moment. I kissed him, desperate and raw, the taste of salt and rain between us. And for the first time, I let myself believe we could do this, together. The months that followed weren't easy. The town talked, whispers trailing me like smoke. Ethan kept his distance, his silence a kind of apology. Lily reached out, her texts tentative, offering friendship I wasn't ready to accept. But Ryder was there, Through every doctor's visit, every sleepless night, every moment of doubt. He painted a nursery in his apartment, his hands steady as he brushed blue across the walls, humming softly to himself. And when our son was born, small and perfect, with Ryder's storm gray eyes, I knew I'd made the right choice. Standing in the hospital room, Ryder holding our son, his face soft with awe, I felt it. A fierce, unshakable hope. Life wasn't perfect. It was messy, raw, full of sharp edges. But it was ours. And as I watched Ryder smile, his thumb brushing our son's tiny hand, I knew we'd fight for it. For us, for the family we were building. Because love, real love, isn't about running from the chaos. It's about standing in the storm, together, and choosing to stay.